What if the reason you feel lost is because you're not living your story, not your truth, but someone else's script, written by society, by fear, by family? You go to school, you get the job, you build a life, but at night, something still feels empty. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but most people never do. They follow paths made for them, not by them." This video is not a motivational speech, it's not advice. It's an invitation to remember what your soul already knows, to discover your personal myth. Carl Jung was more than a psychologist, he was a soul mapper. And one of his most profound ideas was that every human being carries a unique story inside them. A myth, not a fantasy, but a guiding symbol, a deeper narrative. A truth so personal that only you can live it. But here's the problem. Most people never ask the question, what myth am I living? Instead, they live someone else's dream, and then wonder why it feels like a nightmare. The problem, why you feel lost. You wake up, you check your phone, you scroll. You compare, you chase, and somewhere along the way, you forget who you are. You follow what the world told you to want. Success, status, security, but it still doesn't feel right. There's a quiet ache in your chest, a restlessness you can't name. A voice whispering, "This isn't me," but you silence it. With noise, with work, with distractions, because listening to that voice would mean facing a terrifying truth, that you've spent years building a life that doesn't belong to you. Jung saw this in every patient. People who looked fine on the outside, but were dying on the inside. He called it the loss of soul, not in a religious sense, but in the deepest psychological sense. When we forget our true path, our psyche begins to break down. We become anxious, depressed, addicted, numb, because the soul cannot survive in a life that has no meaning. Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And we do. We escape into endless scrolling, into dopamine hits, into pretending we're okay. But deep down, we know we're not. You were not born to be a statistic or a product of your environment. You were born to become something real, something only you can be. And the first step is to stop running and ask yourself, what myth have I been living? Because until you ask that, you'll keep waking up lost, even in a life that looks successful. The personal myth, what it is and why it matters. Carl Jung believed that every soul carries a story, a personal myth. Not a fantasy, not a fairy tale, but a symbolic blueprint of the life you were meant to live. The Greeks called it daimon, the Romans called it genius. Jung called it the individuation process. Becoming whole, becoming real, becoming you. But here's the tragedy. Most people never discover their myth because they're too busy living someone else's. We chase money, trends, approval, while ignoring the deeper call within. A call that doesn't shout, it whispers in your dreams, in your childhood memories, in your quiet moments of truth. Jung said, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul." That's where your myth hides, not on a resume, not in a job title, but in the symbols that have always followed you. Ask yourself, what stories moved you as a child? What archetypes keep showing up in your life? Are you the healer, the warrior, the seeker, the rebel? These aren't just roles, they are pieces of the map. And your unconscious is begging you to follow it. Because when you ignore the myth, you feel lost, but when you live it, life begins to make sense. You stop copying and start becoming. Jung believed that the soul is not here to be efficient, it's here to be fulfilled. And fulfillment does not come from fitting in. It comes from living out the myth that only you can embody. That's the truth. Your personal myth is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Because without it, you'll always feel like something's missing, even when everything seems fine on the outside. How to discover your personal myth. You've been told to find your passion, to follow your dreams, but no one ever told you how. Carl Jung didn't believe in surface-level motivation. He believed in going deep into the unconscious, into the place where your real story lives. So how do you find your personal myth? How do you stop drifting and start becoming? 1. Listen to your dreams. Jung said, dreams are the guiding words of the soul. They're not random. They're messages. When you sleep, the mask falls off and your unconscious starts speaking. In symbols, in stories, in emotions, start writing them down. Look for patterns. Is there a place you keep visiting? A person who keeps appearing? Your myth is there, hidden in the images your conscious mind ignores. 2. Revisit your childhood obsessions. Before the world told you who to be, you were already becoming someone. Look back. What fascinated you as a kid? What did you play over and over again? It wasn't just play. It was prophecy. Those early passions weren't distractions. They were the earliest clues to your path. Don't dismiss them. They remember the part of you that you forgot. 3. Face what triggers you emotionally. What makes you angry? What breaks your heart? What do you envy in others? These emotions are not random. They are the compass of your soul, pointing to the places you've abandoned. If you envy someone brave, it means your courage is asleep. If you fear being seen, it means there's something powerful inside you, waiting to be revealed. Every trigger is a trail. 4. Ask, what role am I playing right now? And is it really mine? Most people don't live. They perform. They become the obedient son, the perfect student, the quiet employee. While their true self screams in silence, your personal myth begins where the performance ends. If your life was a movie, who would you be? And would you respect that character? If the answer is no, then the story you're living is not your own. 5. Integrate your shadow. Your personal myth is not all light. It includes your fears, your rage, your shame. Jung called it the shadow. The part of yourself you reject, but must face. Because your greatest power is hidden in the parts you've been taught to hide. Your myth doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be whole. When you begin this journey, something shifts. The world no longer feels like noise. It starts to feel like a mirror, reflecting back who you truly are, and life begins to feel like yours again. The cost of ignoring your myth. Let me tell you what happens when you ignore your personal myth. At first, everything seems fine. You have a job, a title, maybe even a family. You do what you're supposed to do. You smile. You post, you perform, but inside, a part of you is slowly dying. You wake up tired, even when you've slept. You lose interest in everything. You feel like a stranger in your own life, and worst of all, you can't explain why. That's what it feels like to live someone else's dream. That's what it feels like to betray your myth, and betrayal has consequences. You'll start to numb yourself with food, with screens, with work, or you'll chase meaning in all the wrong places. More money, more followers, more attention, but nothing sticks. Because the hunger isn't for success, it's for yourself. Jung saw it all the time, grown men breaking down. Women questioning everything, not because they were weak, but because they had finally realized. They had built a life that wasn't theirs, and by the time they saw it, they were too far in. Don't wait until your soul screams. Don't wait until your body breaks. Your myth is calling you now, and if you don't answer it, it will turn into pain. The resolution: awaken your personal myth. You don't need another motivational quote. You don't need another 5-step formula for success. What you need is to wake up, not just from sleep, but from forgetting. Because deep down, you already know who you are. You've always known. It showed up in your childhood, in your dreams, in the moments when the world fell away and something inside you whispered, "This is what I was made for." But then life happened. You were told to be realistic, you were told to grow up, you were told to forget. So you did, you followed the path, you played the part. But your myth never left you. It waited in your breakdowns, in your mistakes, in the quiet hunger that never seemed to go away. Jung believed this hunger had a name: the self. Not your ego, not your image, but your true, integrated, mythic self. The version of you that is whole, and becoming that version is not easy. It requires sacrifice, it requires truth. It requires the death of the person you were never meant to be. potential person you are can finally live. Your myth is not a fantasy, it is your assignment. It is the only story worth living because it's yours and no one else can live it for you. Not your parents, not your partner, not your followers. Only you, and you'll know you're on the right path, not because it's easy, but because you'll feel alive again. The depression will lift, the confusion will fade. Not all at once, but steadily, because you're no longer drifting. You're becoming, and the world around you, it will shift. People will notice. They won't be able to explain it, but they'll feel it, because there is nothing more powerful than a human being who is living their myth. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." So look inside, not tomorrow, not one day, now, because your myth is waiting, and if you don't live it, no one ever will. If this message awakens something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more truths like this, subscribe to the channel.